These files were never meant to be public, but someone reopened them. This is the Dark Bureau. Across West Africa, state budgets set aside for the public good evaporate quietly, siphoned away before they ever reach a classroom, a rural clinic, or a well in desperate need of repair. Under layers of bureaucracy, lines of spending, detailed in government documents and illuminated in development agency reports, lose all meaning. Aid funds celebrated in annual reviews and glossy promotional materials are routed to places that exist only on paper, diverted through a tangle of local contractors and international intermediaries with no clear trail of responsibility. Behind the paperwork, resource-rich government contracts signed with the fanfare of public transparency materialise not in urgently needed schools or roads, but in luxury towers, exclusive bank accounts and private jets stored far beyond the reach of any oversight committee. What emerges is not a story of a few isolated crooks, but a vast and well-oiled machine. A system in which officers, ministries, consultancies and shadowy figures all collaborate in quiet understanding. To most citizens, the signs appear only in fragments, ever incomplete. A scandalous court case splashed across headlines, a surge of street protests furious over yet another unfulfilled promise, a sudden top-level resignation with rumours swirling but nothing concrete. Outrage flares but quickly fades. The acts that capture attention are only surface-level symptoms. Behind them lies a more deeply embedded institutional reality. These high-profile cases are mere nodes within a web that extends across state borders and institutional boundaries, bound by silent agreements and mutual protection. This isn't a sequence of isolated misjudgments, but orchestrated, predictably cyclical behaviour. In order to unravel how this happens and why it persists, we must look beyond the headlines. Understanding kleptocracy in the region requires us to see not the faces of individual actors, but the systems of reward, loyalty, and global complicity that keep them moving. The aftermath fills in gradually, like water rising behind a broken dam. In cities from Dakar to Lagos, the signs are always present if you know where to look. Regional newspapers carry stories of yet another billion-dollar budget shortfall. National parliaments debate projects abandoned half-built. Court systems grind through endless, inconclusive cases, while officials trade accusations and ministries pass the blame. On the streets, the public's questions echo. How can such enormous amounts disappear? Who is actually accountable when departments plead ignorance? Where exactly did the public's trust get converted into someone's private gain? And how does this keep happening? A closer look reveals that the answers are not found at the conventional crime scenes. There are no dramatic bank heists or midnight handovers. Instead, everything is camouflaged under routine, nested deep within spreadsheets, official contracts, gaps in regulatory language, and a calculated shuffle of appointments and dismissals. The crisis, once considered an emergency, has become routine. An audit quietly abandoned, a year's worth of teachers waiting for salaries that never come, a health clinic padlocked after months with no supplies. Each time, those who administer these failures are systematically promoted, given access to greater pools of money, protected ever more strongly by the very officers tasked with oversight. Enforcement itself becomes part of the game, selective, weaponised, or merely ignored. Historical context is key. The architecture of power in many West African states is built on a foundation established during colonial administration and recalibrated after independence. Political office is more than a mandate. It is a form of insurance, an opportunity to secure social capital and material advantage. In many cases, the true authority of office lies not in public service, but in control over resource flows. High positions afford the power to direct contracts, pad procurement bidding, and staff key positions with loyalists, ensuring that every promotion ties personal fortune to administrative cooperation. As this logic embeds, it builds a chain of mutual benefit and silent enforcement. Breaching its unwritten rules carries risks far outside the reach of formal sanctions. Procurement, the ordinary technical process by which states acquire goods and services, becomes the lever around which the informal system turns. Public tenders are duly announced, evaluation panels are named, and timelines are published according to statute. In practice, the ultimate outcome has often been determined before the announcement. Key contracts are circulated in private conversation among insiders, with winning bidders promising kickbacks or ongoing shares in return for certainty and access. The same select group of contractors is passed around between ministries, their names and portfolios artificially padded with incomplete or fictionalised projects. Official records show robust competition, but the statistics mask that only a handful of shadow companies, sometimes mere postal addresses, actually receive meaningful work. International aid, rather than disrupting this system, often makes it more robust. Donor funds arrive with earmarks for water, electricity, health or education, detailed in project agreements and progress charts. Yet local capacity constraints and deliberately opaque procedures provide the perfect gap for contractors with cross-border reach. Consulting firms, some legitimate, many merely shells, are brought in, extracting management or advisory fees that dwarf what reaches the intended beneficiaries. The introduction of foreign partners does not guarantee oversight. In many cases, it simply extends the network's reach, linking local patronage to global shadow banking, all shielded by legal technicalities and plausible deniability. With time, reforms were designed to fix these problems. Anti-corruption agencies granted investigative powers, procurement processes digitised for transparency, and new watchdog offices formed within ministries. The reforms, however, often became new battlegrounds. Agencies meant to clean up the system found their budgets controlled by senior officials, their personnel shuffled or threatened if an audit was pursued too aggressively. Promising investigators discovered their salaries delayed, their job postings moved, or their offices relocated on short notice. Meanwhile, legal reforms touted as milestones against graft created opportunities for sophisticated bid laundering, decoy tenders, stage conflicts of interest, and the camouflaging of procurement networks behind layers of red tape and redacted files. The direct consequences are visible across everyday life. In growing towns and rural settlements, hundreds of school buildings are started but left incomplete. Roofing beams stand exposed to the weather. Hospital wards exist on blueprints and signage, but go unstaffed or unfurnished. Asphalt roads, thick with dust, disintegrate within months, while communities are forced to crowd around makeshift pumps, or expectant mothers are told to wait for ambulances that never arrive. Each lost investment chips away at public faith. The more citizens see this pattern repeated, the more it breeds a fatalistic belief that responsibility is always deferred, that asking questions is pointless, that the whole idea of accountability is little more than a fiction. The day-to-day price is borne by millions. The teacher working months unpaid, the entrepreneur forced to pay a bribe simply to connect their business to the grid, the sick mother who knows the clinic's shelves will be empty. Yet the effects reach far beyond local setbacks. The billions in siphoned funds don't simply vanish. They are laundered with the willing assistance of global finance. Networks of shell companies, often established in secrecy-friendly jurisdictions, obscure the origins of state money. Multi-step wire transfers reroute funds through law offices, trust structures, and fictitious development partners. Before long, the proceeds emerge thousands of miles away, on ledgers funding luxury apartments in high-yield investment schemes or in private jets purchased through holding companies. This is facilitated not only by local elites, but also by international lawyers, bankers and consultants, who have little incentive to ask where the money came from, cheering growth and investment in global capitals even as the costs are extracted from West African communities. Structural drivers matter here. The machinery survives because it is adaptable. Rarely does a single investigation break the chain. When political winds shift, when an old guard is displaced or external pressure mounts, the system performs rituals of self-correction. Press releases announcing deep investigations, show trials with extensive media coverage, high-profile resignations, or even brief sentences for select officials. Institutionally, however, these headline events rarely alter the deeper patterns. Networks adapt quickly, shifting personnel and methods while reassigning trusted participants to new roles. Strategies for evasion and concealment are constantly reviewed, benchmarking against supervisory weaknesses or changes in international regulation. Watchdogs, be they journalists, civil society organisations, or international monitors, may succeed in exposing new techniques or securing sporadic victories. But entrenched actors invest just as heavily in mechanisms to neutralise, delay, or dilute real accountability. Feedback loops maintain the status quo, using selective enforcement to protect the system's core while sacrificing expendable members when needed to pacify public or donor concerns. In recent years, however, a new spectrum of responses has appeared. Digital procurement tools and open data initiatives, often introduced under international pressure, have shifted some parts of the battlefield. Irregular spending is easier to track where compatible systems exist and where civil society is empowered to analyse procurement flows in real time. Grassroots organisations are building coalitions that document leakages, aggregate citizen reports, and feed public outrage into legal action. Some have led to rare but important courtroom victories, setting legal precedents for restitution or even partial recoveries. At the level of foreign policy, international conventions and agreements, driven by multilateral institutions, bind states to transparency standards and reporting obligations, although the pace and enforcement remain inconsistent, with loopholes still open to exploitation and the interests of donor states sometimes diffused. Institutional response within affected states is layered and often contradictory. Ministries have experimented with reforms such as rotating procurement officers, establishing electronic tendering platforms, and launching public reporting dashboards. Transparency commissions may require periodic asset declarations from senior public servants or name audit findings publicly. However, those tasked with protecting the system frequently outmaneuver these efforts, using bureaucratic complexity to muddy findings or launching counter-investigations into critical journalists and whistleblowers. International auditing firms and donor-backed oversight bodies sometimes provide technical assistance but lack enforcement power, creating a patchwork of partial reforms and perpetual pilot programs. Where successful prosecutions occur, the political context is rarely neutral. Reformers are sometimes drawn into political conflicts well beyond the issue of corruption itself, leading to new rounds of retaliation and institutional capture. Despite progress, setbacks remain pervasive. For every breakthrough, there is a new move to retaliate. Whistleblowers find themselves subject to harassment, loss of employment, or fabricated legal claims. Watchdog organisations are marginalised through legislative tweaks or direct intimidation. Powerful actors regain control of supposedly independent commissions, ensuring that those designed to prevent abuse are bent to serve those already in power. In this contest, the consequences extend beyond lost money. They further polarise societies, erode social cohesion, and drive away private investment critical for genuine development. Ultimately, the structural lesson is sobering. The persistence of kleptocracy in West Africa is not the result of an evil conspiracy or a chain of particularly gifted criminals, but of a complex, durable ecosystem, one that adapts to reform, absorbs exposure, rewards loyalty, and punishes defection. Breaking its hold demands more than technical improvements, legal reforms, or increased audits. It requires a fundamental disruption of the incentives that sustain the network, a realignment of career rewards, robust protection for reformers and whistleblowers, and meaningful international action to scrutinise and freeze laundered assets. Only then can a genuine contest unfold, one in which those profiting from the darkness are confronted and those working to illuminate the system finally gain the upper hand. Until these underlying structures are challenged and unpicked, the struggle will continue, a persistent friction between an old order invested in secrecy and extraction, and a rising chorus demanding transparency, accountability, and public trust truly honoured.